Now let's continue to use our box modeling techniques to refine the shape of the body of the car. Alright, so this is where we left off, and I'm just going to go to shading and turn on wireframe on shaded so that we can see our shaded model a little bit better when we don't have it selected. And now what we need to do is continue to add some more resolution and also kind of refine the shape a little bit. So to add resolution after the fact, one useful tool is the Insert Edge Loop tool. And to use that, we're going to go to Edit Mesh and Insert Edge Loop tool. I'm going to go ahead and add this to my shelf, just holding down Control Shift and clicking on that. And that'll enable us to go ahead and access that when we need it. Now the first thing I want to do is go ahead and insert an edge loop right along here. Okay, and we know that the shape's going to change in here, so we can use this line, and let's go ahead and add another edge loop right in here to begin with, and that will help us. We're just kind of adding resolution as we need it at this point. Alright, so I'm going to take these on the side, and I want this deck to be completely flat here, so I'm going to go ahead and move this up and hold down X, and just pulling along this axis, I'll snap that right in there. Okay, so I'll make that completely flat, and I've kind of matched it up with the line here that we have in our template. You can see where that's kind of going to be the wheel arch and so forth. Now in here, you can see that this body comes in quite a bit. So what we need to do is move our points in. Okay, and this is going to be our belt line, so this is defining the bottom of the canopy, so we'll leave that there. This is going to be our shoulder line, so we'll kind of move this in. At this point we can avoid kind of wavy lines and dents, because assuming we're going to smooth this, we still have very low resolution. It's going to smooth, fairly well, but what we have to be aware of is when we start adding more resolution, just keeping that nice and smooth. So go ahead and pull this in. Go ahead and make sure that I'm getting all of these guys as well. Now these guys on the bottom we don't have to worry about as much, because we're not going to spend too much time here on the bottom of the car. If you have a shot where a car is flying overhead, you probably want to spend a lot more time working the undercarriage, but we don't have that issue, so we're going to just work on the parts that we're going to see, basically. All right, so the top view, and you can go to wireframe if that'll help a little bit. You can start to pull some of that geometry in there. Okay, and what we can also start to do is just shape this in general. So this bone line here, we know we want it to come down, and at this point this is going to be sort of at the midpoint of the vehicle. The shoulder line will still be fairly close to this belt line. So now we can kind of start to refine our shape a little bit. And kind of move some of these points down here, and just kind of put those lines where we want them. And we want them to flow kind of up towards the front. Okay, and there's our shoulder line. You want it to kind of come up here, so just kind of shape this, and it's going to come up and over. Now let's go ahead and add another line right in here, and we want to start to bring down this bone line, this character line here that we have. Just kind of start to shape that. And we can start to shape the way that we want our canopy. Let's go ahead and insert an edge loop right in here. And we're just adding resolution as we need it. Okay. And go ahead and pull this in. And pull that in. Get these points pulled in there. And we want to define where our canopy is going to begin. So we want a kind of a long shape here, and part of it's going to be canopy, and part of it's going to be the part of the car, but we want the whole shape to work together. And I'm thinking that's going to go from basically from here up to where the engine will be up here. So we can kind of shape that from the top, start the shape of our canopy there. kind of pull this shoulder line over just a bit. And just pulling and pushing points. And if you're doing any kind of modeling, that's going to be a large part of what you're going to be doing in many cases. Go ahead and pull this out to match up with this back here. We can add another edge loop in here. And now let's go ahead and start to define this A line, or what we talked about, the profile of the car. So we can come into the side view and we can start pulling up just the center line here. And that's going to define our canopy and also kind of the shape of the center of the car here. So we'll go ahead and pull this up. And let's go all the way basically up to the front and make a nice clean line there. And let's go all the way up to here. And then at this point, this is where our engine is going to start. So we can go ahead and just leave that for now. As we when we get our engine in there, we'll be able to pull that up. So we're starting to get this defined. You can see that we our shoulder line and our belt line here, we can sort of make the same kind of curve there. And if we want those to be perfectly aligned, we can kind of move those up. Okay, and this defines the bottom of the cockpit. So what I want to do is pull this down kind of right in here. Okay, and then we'll bring this kind of a little bit straighter. Okay, and we can bring the whole thing down a bit more. Bring that straight across. So we're working. You can see how some of those lines are starting to work. And right in here, can maybe bring down that a little bit. You can see it kind of matching up with that line that we have defined there. Okay, starting to work with those lines a little bit more and refining the shape of our car. Now let's go ahead and define where we want our engine to be. So I think that we want it to kind of come in right in here. So what we want is we need basically another edge right in here. And then I'll grab these edges and let's go ahead and add one more. We'll kind of even those out a little bit. And then we want to shape the top of the engine. And I'm thinking a kind of a cylindrical shape with a it kind of protrudes forward. So I'll go ahead and shape this out just a little bit by pulling some of these in and then kind of pulling that in like that. And so the engine, we want to, the top of the engine, we want to be kind of the same width as what our canopy is going to be. So that'll be that portion right in there. And then we'll bring these out in order to make that round shape. And just visualize that this is happening on the other side as well. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do that. And let's maybe bring this whole thing in just a little bit. Go ahead and bring that canopy in. All right, let's go ahead and extrude this straight up. Okay, we'll go ahead and just extrude. And for this, we're going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and let's go ahead and add that to our shelf. And I'll just extrude that. I'll change to our world mode and just extrude that kind of straight up. Now if we go to our side view, we can see that it's angled a bit. So go ahead and bring that up there and kind of move it into position. And then we can just grab those points and kind of match those up. Okay. If you want to grab that whole top part and scale it down a little, that way you make sure you don't get any lumps or anything that's not. If you move these individually, you can tend to get this kind of lumpy stuff here. And now what we can do is take up this point at the back of the A line here, the back of the canopy, and just move it up. Okay, so that gives us that sort of a look there. And we can maybe move the canopy down a little bit. Because we want a nice line there between here and then down to there. Okay, and I do want to leave a little bit of space right here between this. Okay, so we'll work on that A line a little bit. Get those lines blocked in there. All right. And let's also smooth out the back of this. So right now it's basically just squared off, but I want this to round out. So let's take this corner and kind of move this in the X and also maybe in the Z and just kind of smooth this out. We're going to have kind of a large back end anyway, but we can kind of smooth it out using that, just moving those in just a little bit. Maybe move that in so it's kind of contoured back into the back end a little bit more. Possibly move that in. Something a little bit more like that. So let's go ahead and continue in the next lesson. We're slowly building up our geometry. So just kind of take your time and work on the shapes before you start adding too much resolution. Kind of get the main lines in here. So we've got our A line, our belt line. We've got these lines over here that we're trying to work with, and defining just the sort of the main shape of the car before we go in and start adding any details. So we still need to add the front end and the fenders that are going to go over these tires, also the wheel wells, and we've got a lot of work to do, but we're just going to take our time and so that we don't get ahead of ourselves in a way. So let's go ahead and come in the next lesson and continue to work on the shape of our car.